Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Jillian McEwan, the Director of Lunan Bay Farm in Angus. And it was a pleasure to welcome you all at the farm yesterday. We're just about an hour south of here, and we run a regenerative Cashmere farm, a goat enterprise. We're very unique, and we're the only one in the UK that does this. So over the past several years, we've built a range of visitor experiences around it. So we do goat farm tours, textile and spinning workshops, a farm shop we call a goat garment shop. We run seasonal events, including our sellout Goats and Coats Festival, and more recently, our Lobsters at Lunan coastal dining experience that we offer. So today, I'm going to share with you 6 consumer trends that are reshaping agritourism and farm retail right now. And I'll be drawing heavily on what we've seen at Lunan Bay, because these are actually real examples of working farms, which are worth a dozen market reports. So the thread connecting all 6 trends in this basically is the farm visitor has changed. Fundamentally, the farms that understand what that new visitor is and what they're actually looking for are the ones that will be pulling ahead. Okay, so just to start at the scale of the opportunity, because I want to understand that what we're doing is not niche. The global agritourism market is now worth 75 billion, growing nearly at 11% every year. So last year, according to the research, there were 826 million rural stay nights which were recorded worldwide, which is amazing. And this is one of the fastest growing sectors in global tourism. So in the UK, we have pick your own, farm trails, visitor experiences that have all seen sustained growth. But what's not changed is the numbers, is who's actually coming. And this is what we're seeing on our farm and what they expect when they arrive. So at Lunan Bay Farm, our visitor numbers have grown every year since we opened our experiences. But more striking than the numbers is the profile of the visitor. They're not just curious about the farm, they're searching for something specific. They arrive with questions and they've definitely done their research. So these are 6 trends that explain what they're searching for. So like Sherry just mentioned, it's that authenticity premium. Visitors are paying a significant more for experiences that they believe are genuine, not staged, not sanitized, completely real. At Lunan Bay, our signature goat farm tour is led by myself, the farmer. That's what visitors mostly like for that signature experience. I talk about the Cashmere fibre cycle, the rotational grazing we do, why we choose the breed we do. I answer questions honestly, and I don't follow a script, which can sometimes lead you going off to tangents, but that's all part of it. That tour is consistently our highest rated experience, not because it's over-polished, because it's actually real. And we're finding the data backs this up. Premium agritourism experiences are commanding 2 to 3 times the price of comparable non-farm leisure activities. So we find visitors aren't just accepting the farm context, they're specifically seeking a signal of authenticity. So the implication for operators is really straightforward. Your story is your most valuable asset. Your provenance, your practice, and your people. So if you're not making those visible at every touch point from your website to your welcome gate, you're leaving a significant amount of money on the table. And the next trend is a shift from a farm attraction to farm as a destination. And the talks this morning cemented that theory that there's a critical difference there. So an attraction is obviously something that you just visit once. A destination is something you plan a whole trip around. And we found this through our experiences. We're having people flying over from the States for a 1-hour tour at our Goats and Coats, just to come to our area to enjoy that. We're having people that are commuting up, travelling by chauffeur-driven taxi, 3 hours, 4 hours, just because there's something unique that they're coming to. So the attraction, as I said, is something you just visit once. A destination is something that you plan your trip around. So at Lunan Bay, we're on a seasonal event called Goats and Coats every Easter. This year, it drew 3,000 visitors over 4 days, which was pretty decent, but nothing like the numbers that Rob was getting, which were pretty wild. So we've got a long way to go there. But yeah, so every year it sells out, and what we've observed was remarkable. It was the social media reach from visitor posts alone far exceeded anything that we'd managed to generate through our paid marketing. The event created urgency. We only run it for 2 weekends every year, so people have the whole FOMO. They don't want to miss out, and that created loyalty. Many of those visitors have since booked other experiences, a deeper dive experience into our Cashmere production, and many of them become repeat customers and also now book online through our e-commerce. And also the UK farm sector data showed exactly this pattern. The farms growing fastest are not simply offering access, they're creating moments worth booking for, worth talking about, and worth returning for. So I'd suggest if you don't offer a sold-out seasonal event yet, maybe that's the gap you need to close. Okay. So the third trend is about what's happening inside your farm shop. And I suspect probably a lot of us that do this are underperforming. So, the traditional farm shop model, like they alluded to this morning, you sell the product, the visitor leaves. It's now been replaced by something a lot more powerful, the multi-layer destination. So our goat to garment shop, which is just a converted shipping container, it doesn't just sell cashmere, it sells the story from the product, from the fibre to the finished garment. And we're finding it's connecting that consumer physically to our goats, to our land, to our textile workshops. And ultimately, the spend is higher because they've really bought into what you're doing, the bigger picture on your farm and within your enterprise. So the visitors who come in for one thing rarely leave. They leave with a completely newfound value of cashmere and want to support you longer term. So think of it as progression. The traditional shop is more transactional. The destination retail model layers in experience. So for example, unique dining, seasonal products, that complete provenance story. So the most successful model which we're working towards is what I call the experience ecosystem. So basically, that's multiple revenue touch points that reinforce each other and bring visitors back. So what we've been finding is someone who buys a skein of our yarn in the shop is more likely to book a spinning tour. Someone who does a workshop with us is more likely to return for a lobster evening. And we find that these connections are real and they compound. So the fourth trend is the one that I felt most personal when I saw the first research, and the one I think it represents the biggest underserved opportunity in certainly Scottish agritourism right now, and it's the whole farm to fibre consumer. So far, agritourism, as you know, has been dominated by food for generations. Farm to fork is the well-established narrative, and quite rightly so. But there is a growing consumer category looking for fibre, for textiles, craft, and also non-food provenance. And there's very few of us that are telling that story well. So at Lunan Bay, the original story of cashmere garment is as emotionally compelling to our visitors as farm-to-plate meal. We find they want to meet the goats, as you did yesterday, stroke the goats, feel how soft the cashmere is. They want to hold the fleeces, and they want to understand the breeding selection, the fibre quality, and why the Scottish conditions produce what they do. So our textile and spinning workshops are consistently oversubscribed. Visitors arrive with genuine knowledge. They know their stuff. They're really into this, like quite nerdy, actually. You know, they've done their research on regenerative fibres, they understand the problem with fast fashion, and they're prepared to pay a significant premium for that verified provenance. So my advice is if your farm produces anything beyond food, wool, craft, fibre, flowers, timber, then there is a consumer, from what we've found, that is actively researching and searching for that story. Most of them haven't found anyone telling it yet, so there's a clear gap in the market. Okay. The fifth trend follows on from the fourth, is that regenerative consumer. A quarter of agritourism market growth globally is now linked to regenerative farming and wellness travel combined, and that's certainly not niche. There is a quarter of the growth in the entire sector. And you know, the word regenerative has crossed the farming practice into the consumer vocabulary. Booking platforms are recording it as a search term now, and travel editorials are using it also. Visitors arrive at Lunan Bay Farm specifically because we describe our practice as regenerative. And it's not just the marketing label, it's because that's the genuine description of how we are looking after the soil health, the animals, and the textiles that we're producing. So what strikes me is how many visitors want to understand what regenerative actually means in practice, and that's a huge growing market. They're not satisfied with the word. They think there's an element of greenwashing, and they want the detail behind it all. They want to know about the soil health, breeding choices, rotational grazing, carbon outcomes. So that depth of conversation is an enormous opportunity, which we should all be tapping into for the work that we're doing honestly. So one practical note, the regenerative visitor has significantly lower price resistance than a conventional visitor, and we're finding they're prepared, they understand that this practice comes at a cost, and they're willing to support us, and that's not always the cheapest option, which is good. Finally, moving on to the final trend that we've observed on the farm. And this trend might surprise you, is the luxury rural is such a fast-growing segment. So our Goats and Coats Festival is a high-throughput experience designed for domestic, was initially designed for domestic customers. More recently, we're focusing on private bespoke tours for smaller groups between 2 to 12 people, typically spending up to 3 to 4 hours on the farm to have that fully deep dive. These premium small group experiences we're finding are significantly outperforming the high throughput volume-based models. We find as well those visitors at the top of the market aren't looking for cheap farm access, they're looking for exceptional farm access. So at Lunan Bay, we run Lobsters at Lunan, which is our private coastal dining experience where we bring in private chefs and offer small seasonal tours. These aren't cheap tours, but we're finding that they're selling, and they're selling well. So guests who come to us they're looking for something that they can't get in a restaurant in Edinburgh. They're looking for an experience that only exists on our farm, in the landscape, in the dunes, and with the sound of the goats in the background. So really the location and the provenance are inseparable, and I'm sure that's something that you can all replicate at your places. So the lesson it took me a while to accept is this: small farms can absolutely compete. We're not a huge operation, but we can show that we can compete with larger operations, not by trying to match their scale, but by matching with our depth, our story, and the intimacy. And this is precisely what premier visitors are looking for and paying for. So, how are we doing for time? Okay, time's up. Okay, so I'll just quickly skip through that one. Just to focus on the takeaways. So firstly, define and tell your authentic story, your provenance, your practice, and your people are clearly your competitive advantage. Make them visible online, in person, at every touch point around your farm. Second, create seasonal urgency with events. Design moments that people really have to book, sold out seasonal events, exclusive small group offers. And then thirdly, think beyond farm to fork. If you produce anything that's not food, fibre, craft, flowers, timber, there's a growing underserved consumer segment that's actively looking for that. Okay, I'm getting called off. Thanks very much.